Om Shanti, good evening, and welcome to Interview with a Raj Yogi. Our topic today is spirituality and the power of awareness. But first, as usual, we're going to start with a reflection. Seated comfortably, I bring my awareness completely into this moment, as if time has stopped, and all I am aware of is what's happening here now. Taking this moment to set my spiritual posture before I return to any sense of time. My spiritual posture is my awareness, my sense of identity, my sense of self. And just as when the body is properly aligned, it can move freely, lightly, gracefully, without pain. When I, the being, am in my true or timeless awareness, my actions, my thoughts, words, deeds will be free, light, graceful, peaceful, free of pain. It only takes a second to set my spiritual alignment. All I need to do is remember. I am a soul. I am separate from this body. This body is like a costume. It has an image, it has a story, but it is temporary. I am beyond any physical image, and my own story is beyond the bounds of this body, this costume. My story begins and ends with the truth that I am a peaceful being. My true nature is very peaceful, very serene. I am eternal. And I have a very natural capacity to let go, to stay light and free, to move easily along with time. I take a moment to feel those words, set my spiritual posture, and feel I am ready to return to the rhythm of time, action, and sound, centered and aligned. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, and welcome to all on YouTube and Instagram joining us this evening, part 2, Spirituality and Power of Awareness. So as we mentioned last week, we were going to focus on what soul consciousness is in terms of this topic this week. And something came up actually just during the meditation when you were sharing about aligning in 1 second in one thought. How does one sense that I'm moving into a space that is of awareness versus thought? Does it take practice?
I really appreciate the word that's used in Hindi for awareness, which is smriti, because it has a double meaning, which is to be aware, but also to remember. And so I can think a lot of things, but remembering is somewhat different. Remembering means I am reconnecting or re-belonging to something I had been connected to or belonged to before. So I could think about something that I have not experienced before, and I'll never really go anywhere meaningful with it because I have no memory of it. So when we're saying I am a soul, I'm actually remembering. I'm going into an experience that I had once very naturally. So there's this faith, this understanding. I know what it feels like. I've never stopped being a soul. I just forgot. It's not like I suddenly become one by thinking it. I am remembering, activating that feeling, that reality. And I will know it's happening because I am one and I have that experience. So I really like this idea of remembering. It's far more than just thought. It's moving into a completely different reality.
Where does opposition sort of play a part in terms of doubt or questioning myself, or maybe doing something that I think that is soul consciousness, but it's not, especially when you say, oh, I should know?
When we forgot or neglected that awareness, which was according to what needed to happen, we developed other ways of operating. Rather than spiritual ways of operating, we developed what we call body conscious ways of operating. And so rather than having my true sense of self, I developed this almost false sense of self, which many know as ego. And so now I've got this very tenacious dynamic or habit inside ego, and it really doesn't want to go. So as I sort of say, I'm ready to let go of ego, return to truth, ego says, I don't think so. And it comes with all sorts of interesting thoughts it puts into my mind. So it seems quite valid. We give a lot of value or power to thoughts that are created through ego. And these will include, I don't have time, I'm not sure what I'm doing, this isn't working, all of these types of things that will encourage me to jump ship. So patience is a huge part of remembering.
So when you were sharing that, I would know if I'm in that experience. Do you find that maybe through time, as one continues to practice, that feeling of knowing would be more clear given all these obstacles?
Absolutely. The reason we need to really appreciate that we'll know is because this is outside the realm of science. And we give incredible value to things that science can confirm and validate. And if they can't, we just say, I'm not sure. And we have to realize there is other proof outside of science. Our own knowing, our own recognition is very valid proof. So that's why we kind of have to go into this with that faith. I can't wait for science to prove to me who I am. And they won't be able to because I'm invisible. I'm outside of what is quantifiable. So they're trying, they've tried a lot, but it's outside of that. So I've got to trust my own knowing as a valid confirmation. Yes, this is who I am. Yes, I know what I'm doing.
Now, we had one topic, which is about timing in the past. And in relation to our conversation tonight, because of this opposition from ego, what does timing play? Like, well, how does that play a role in terms of wanting so much to remember that I'm a soul? And there's this tug of war with ego, and to be able to let go. So tired of trying to figure things out.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of the answer in your question. I mean, the way this sort of drama or human nature, if you will, spiritual nature is set up is there's a limit. Thank goodness there's a limit to how far the pain and sorrow can go. And there's a reason that we go into pain and sorrow to fully experience all it means to be a soul and a body. But there is a limit, and everyone reaches that limit in their own time. That limit is indicated by a restlessness, a readiness, a strong seeking, saying, I'm moving into a period where I am open to change. I'm ready to let go. So that's different for every soul according to their own journey, their own story.
So it does seem like when there is that restlessness or the ability to actually to go into this journey, is there then this disinterest in the opposition to try to engage with it or maybe identify it more? And so I can just sort of stick to the program.
I'm sorry, I was slightly distracted. Can you repeat the question?
We noticed, Benny, you have mentioned something.
Sorry.
In terms of disinterest, if that then actually becomes an ally for us, there's opposition.
I think it's huge. I find a very useful companion all along the way. It's not just at the beginning, but I'm constantly finding disinterest a very useful companion. There's some powerful words on the spiritual journey that have gotten an interesting connotation when we are, as we call it, body conscious. Detachment is one of them, and disinterest is another. Oddly enough, these two are huge, huge allies in the spiritual journey. I don't think it's possible to move forward without them. And to really understand, appreciate what they mean as they come into spirituality. How are these positive energies? I know they've got negative feelings connected to them when we're believing we're the body, but they actually are very positive allies or energies that help to move us along. So it's important to know what they are about.
It seems like a whole new topic. But with, we mentioned about that this is about soul consciousness. Can you say that consciousness and awareness is the same thing?
Yeah, we often say I'm a point of consciousness, a point of awareness, just this basic sense of self.
I just want to just acknowledge Benny's message here. I can totally connect to this. Oftentimes I am amazed how some science is helping us, and we're so lucky to know things beyond science. So this was the comment about, we really can't wait till science to prove things. And even when you're sharing about that, it feels like at the end of the day, it has everything to do with what do I deeply resonate with and believe in, because I know there's lots of things that science tries to prove. And I was thinking, what if science could prove? Like, would that really, really like change things? I'm not sure. I mean, there's just so much internal opposition. It seems like that's really where it's coming from.
I think I just want to add, science is not the enemy. Science, I'm always in awe of what the soul, is accomplishing in the realm of science. But when science and spirituality separate or almost become opponents, then things start to get very interesting. But when science is in service to spirituality or to values, then it's very beautiful.
Now, we mentioned about this soul consciousness, and this may be a term that's really for those who've taken the study, Raja Yoga, body consciousness. You can be aware that you're not aware that you're soul, and we mentioned that last week, and you still have a different kind of awareness. When I'm soul conscious, how does that affect, I guess, every capacity then?
Yeah. So soul consciousness literally launches us into a different world, into a different operating system where we mentioned this word before, detachment rules. Sometimes we use the word purity and spirituality interchangeably. Whether it's purity or truth or detachment, it's really all the same thing. With spirituality, I become aware of my eternal identity. If we ask anyone, on the street, who are you? And they're not trying to be clever or anything. They're really being honest about who they think they are as they go through the day. And the top of the list is probably going to be a physical name, the name of the body. They're going to start to list a bunch of stuff, all of which are temporary, all of it. So they'll probably say, my name is so-and-so. I am married to so-and-so. I have 4 children. I work here. I have this. I'm this religion. Whatever the case. Now, some try and get clever, but if they were to be honest, how they actually go through the day, their sense of self, their awareness, their consciousness around the self is all embedded in temporary stuff, external stuff, physical stuff that's connected to the body they are in. And this body is temporary. I don't think I need to convince anyone of that. I think everyone knows that this body is temporary. So I've put my sense of self in something that is temporary. So now we've created this concept of death and this entire way of operating, which is very mortal. And what soul consciousness does is says, I am not this body. I'm an eternal being that's operating through this body. So all the things that I thought were I and mine were illusions, these temporary things. So it's this massive shift of the words I and mine. I don't need to walk away from any of it. I don't need to separate. I just feel that I am not those things and they are not mine. Like it's a very natural state. We become a detached observer, trustee of everything. So it literally moves me into a different operating system relative to this corporeal realm and allows me to reconnect to what is eternal, the spiritual treasures of the self.
And there are habits of identifying with physicality. When I'm trying to just switch my awareness, is there this tug of war inside then?
Absolutely. This journey towards truth has been memorialized, I think, in almost every myth. And it's shown as a battle between light and dark, between truth and illusion or lies. It's shown as a battle. So I don't mean to sound dark or frightening, but I very often will share with souls that they don't go in naive, that there is going to be resistance, that it is going to be a battle, but that it is inevitable that we succeed. Truth must prevail. Truth will prevail. The eternal must always prevail. The temporary will eventually fall away.
Does it feel uncomfortable when there is that experience of that battle? Because there's the pull. There's the pull of the old. You want to go into, this awareness. And what does that look like inside? In terms of, because I can see one could gird down, lock down, repress.
Yeah, when we use the word battle, probably top of the list is a lot of violence, a lot of laboring, a lot of pressure, a lot of force. And it's like, I don't think I want that. I think I'll
Does it
just
sound
stay the
appealing at
way
all?
I am. Thank you very much. So, to reassure you, it's a little bit, I know it sounds a little paradoxical or oxymoron, but this is a battle where there's no violence. And if there is violence, it's a sign I'm not using the right method. I'm trying to move into certain states without soul consciousness. So it's a very loyal indicator if I am experiencing pressure, tiredness, or doubt, or disheartenment, or any of these things. They're just feedback. I need to step back and reset.
So let's say one is going through something, I don't know, reactions going on inside, emotions. Is it possible in the middle of that to switch your awareness?
This is why in this spiritual journey towards truth, we have something called spiritual knowledge. These are actually the weapons that we use on this battlefield, is understanding. So it's very interesting. I had this moment today where a little bit of a reaction was coming up, and I could literally feel it was almost like there's this very fragile thing that's trying to grow, this spiritual identity. And there's all these really protective mothers, which is the spiritual knowledge. And the moment there was a little bit of reactivity that was threatening the fragility of our conscious, these mothers went into into action.
Can I imagine what that
and they
actually felt
all
like?
just went into protection mode, using spiritual knowledge to protect the sanctity and authenticity of the self. So we use this spiritual knowledge, which means that we're, when someone's using a weapon, this is a very important thing. If someone gives me, if I'm in the fitness studio and there's a piece of equipment, usually what happens is you get training on the equipment, you develop facility with the equipment so that when you actually have to use the equipment in a certain situation, you already have experience with it. And this is the same thing with spiritual knowledge. We have a practice called churning, but I want to develop a facility. I want to unlock the usefulness of that weapon. You can't just say, oh, I've got this beautiful weapon, pick it up and expect to. Trust me, I've tried bow and arrow on the spot and it was disastrous. It just sort of flopped. So I need to develop facility with spiritual understanding, because some say, oh no, I'm using it. It's like, no, but you haven't really unlocked the usefulness of it. So it's kind of roaming around in your head, but it's not feeling effective to address the storm or reactivity inside. So when we're in a good place, we work with the spiritual knowledge a lot to develop a facility to unlock the power of it. And then it's going to be there for me when it's needed, when that protection is needed.
So perhaps you can give an example when you're saying, when I'm in a good place, I'm unlocking that, that facility. What does that look like in terms of what am I experiencing? What's the sign it's effective?
I think it starts by a little shift in habit. So all of us, all people are used to churning something. Right now, we have tons of access through social media and through media in general to lots of worldly information. So that's mostly what people are churning throughout the day. It is completely ineffectual. All that worldly knowledge is not going to help me on the spiritual journey. So we have the habit of churning. We all are competent in it. I just need to change. We call it our food and diet. I need to change what I'm churning on. So it's first going to start with just shifting my diet. That's the first step. When I say diet, I mean inner diet, is to replace less worldly information, more spiritual knowledge. That's kind of step one. Otherwise,
So just thinking about it,
just exposing myself to it. One of the first things we tell people is when they're taking the course, we have virtue cards. We have literature. There's now so much online as well. And to have the habit at the beginning of the day, most important meal of the day, spiritual breakfast, beginning of the day, rather than turning on the news or looking at their phone to see what's going on, is to expose themselves to spiritual knowledge. That's their first bite. So that's the first thing, is just to replace the food in my inner cupboard, if you will. The second thing is to develop a facility to not be clever with it, but to actually try to experience it. So again, ego will constantly be interfering, and it'll say, they seem pretty determined to continue with this, so I'm going to have to interfere every step of the way. And it likes to interfere with churning. So I'm very clever with it, which ego says, okay, they seem kind of satisfied. They
like repeating it, memorizing it,
analyzing it, making interesting connections, but I'm not actually experiencing it. And so giving myself, and we've talked about that before, the sign I am experiencing it is it allows me to go into peace or silence, not more expansion. We had a beautiful blessing on this today. Not more expansion. It's actually taking me to the seed, closer to the seed, not further away from the seed, closer to that silence, that peace. It's clearing a space is what it's doing, simplifying, decluttering my inner world.
Wow, I think that's deep. I guess we have to sort of just really check in. Is that what I'm experiencing? And so I have mastery over that experience. So when you were talking about this fragility today, and these mothers came on board, what were you feeling? Was it the capacity, that facility, that's you could access the experience in a second? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I really found it was interesting in the sense that to compare it, I mean, this is the beauty of a spiritual journey, is we are in this very powerful place of contrast. So comparing to before being in the study, what would happen if there was reactivity? You know, and when we say reactivity, as an example, someone says something to you and you feel this reaction happening inside, good or bad, but a reaction to what they said. And what would have happened in the past is probably something along the line of, how could they say that to me? And all sorts of interesting rationalizations or defensiveness or offensiveness towards that soul. I think we all know the drill, the types of thoughts that can come up. That's the old way. We work with spiritual knowledge. We discover that basic formula, whatever I'm feeling inside about any stimuli, if it's a person or a situation, whatever I feel inside has nothing to do with that person or situation. It is completely a function of the results of thinking I'm the body, completely. So that's the first thing I have to accept. If I haven't accepted that, then I'm never going to get past go. So once that's kind of understood, that's when the powers of understanding go into activation, and working with all of this spiritual knowledge to reinforce the self-respect, the sense of self, the capacities of the self, the honesty with the self, from such a stage of self-respect. So I can look at myself and see what's going on here. What's just been triggered inside, and what medication do I need to address it? So I don't waste my time in those old thoughts. It's a complete waste of time. It actually, what I felt was the moving in to stop a wound opening up. Because that's all we're doing, is rewounding ourselves when we go into those old thoughts.
So if I'm practically actually using the knowledge of understanding my context, my journey, so then like the waste thoughts don't come.
Part of my exploration today around this was around two words of health and wealth. And always curious what these mean spiritually, because they're used a lot in our spiritual study. It's not physical health and wealth. This is the health and wealth of the soul, spiritual health and wealth. And what I realized is wealth is the capacity to use the knowledge to maintain the dignity of the self. We call it wisdom. And it's wonderful. It means my karmas will stay in order. And that's important given what the consequences will be. So a feeling, a reaction comes, much like I was describing today, and then I'm using the knowledge to kind of neutralize and turn it around. That's great. But my next thought was, I look forward to being so healthy that the feelings don't even come. Health is more powerful than wealth, actually. There's many wealthy people who are very sick physically and they're very unhappy. So health is really powerful. You have a healthy heart, the feelings don't even come. That's the end game. We call it a certain term, karmatik, but that's where we want to go. So there was that understanding. So I started to kind of explore, like now my thoughts were completely on understanding health, wealth, exploring all these ideas. I wasn't even thinking about the situation anymore. I was so fascinated by this idea of, wow, all of that is just a sign of lacking health. I can use wealth to keep myself in order, and that's good, right? That's very good. But I really thought to have that purity of heart, that really healthy heart, where the feelings don't even come. And there's only one way, and that's where we go into yoga. So it's not just awareness, I am a soul, or remembering I am a soul, but also remembering I am a child of the Supreme Soul, that relationship, one strength, one support. So that's a whole nother conversation, but I really want to become healthy, not just wealthy, the wisdom to manage these reactions, but so healthy I don't even have the reactions. That's really where the conversation went. But it was just, working. It takes so much time to get through these stages, but working to the point where this starts to become, as opposed to the contrast of what used to happen, still awareness of that. But okay, this is the journey that's going on now. And there's a very nice short, story called A Story in, 5 chapters, something like that, that really describes this process that we slowly go through on the spiritual journey. A Story in 5 chapters.
I'm glad you brought up in terms of the awareness of, belonging to the Supreme Soul, because I know we've been focusing on soul consciousness, but just in terms of the aspect of churning, because even just this aspect of I am a soul that I can go into, it feels like if I'm doing this properly, you said that there is true silence because I'm touching reality. If I'm doing this properly, digesting properly, it helps me to fortify my awareness, so that this is really what it's about. Is ultimately I need to heal, because my sense of the wealth of my awareness is sort of not there right now, but ultimately I need to heal. And so in terms of the awareness of who I belong to, it feels like we're on this parallel that also has to feel like it's a reality.
Yeah, and it won't if I'm not experiencing myself to be a soul, that belonging to Supreme Soul, as much as we'd like it to, it can't feel real if I still think I'm something else. I'm not even of the same species, really. So it's through that soul consciousness. I'm a soul. What now is mine? What now is mine? So it's this reframing comes very naturally from soul consciousness. What will happen when I'm trying to feel very deep connection to God, I will change God to try and make that one belong to me, which is what we've done, right? We've turned God into a bodily being or into everywhere all around us. We've altered that being to try to bring them close to us. And in fact, it's not that I need to change that being to bring them close to me. I need to change to become close to that being. So I need to experience myself to be a soul, to get close to that being, rather than altering that being so they can come close to me and I stay in a very physical sense of self.
Reason why we focused on awareness is the first thing, because it feels like it colors everything else in this study. And eventually we will move off into this aspect of spirituality in day-to-day life. And it feels like we can't go anywhere if that aspect of awareness isn't something we really focus on. So in terms of just one who's either in the middle of studying, just starting study, what are some things I just need to be mindful of? I know you've highlighted some things like, I have some simple aspects such as I am a soul. I really want to be able to experience them. Is it then that what I'm really trying to do is actually quite simple, and that there's more of an aim for a quality of depth versus trying to read more information, know more?
I know that when I started this study, and I get the sense this was perhaps in some ways at the beginning of many of the students in the beginning, it's so important to have conversations with the self, to make it very clear to the self exactly what my objective is, or if you will, what's most meaningful to me. A dramatic way, this has often been said, is what would you die for? I mean, it's got to be really, really strong. Why am I doing this? And then probably step 2 is to be very clear how soul consciousness is related to my objective. So I'm not going to be soul conscious for no particular reason. Like, it needs to be connected. The terms we use is aim and objective in the study, but I need to have I know this is something that I revise often, as over the years I've revised it, of why am I doing this? That needs to be so clear, the awareness of why I am doing this. What is my objective? And then, is soul consciousness connected to that objective? I think when those two things are really clear, that's just the way we're built to operate. Is we want something, and if the method appears to be connected to what we want, we will throw ourselves into that method. So we have to want it really bad. Now, the first student who's shown behind us, Brahma Baba, what was his objective? What was he willing to die for? What did he renounce everything for? What was most meaningful, important to him? It's fairly clear. Mastery of the self, dignity of the self. That was, he said, this is quality of life. Anything else isn't life. It's just surviving, struggling. It's not living. He really felt strongly self-mastery, dignity of the self, royalty of the self. This is the most important thing. Spirituality appeared to support that endeavor. So, these are nice words, but I'm really the feeling of, this is what I want to dedicate. This is quality of life to me. It has to be very strong in the soul. So the timing piece is important too. But it's really the sense of, this is the most important. And we perhaps need to be knocked around a few times before we're ready to have that kind of conversation with the self.
Would you say that just this clarity of what matters is a part of what it means to go into the experience? Because we're talking about awareness, and we've actually touched on 3 aspects. There's the awareness of me, the soul, awareness of who I belong to, and then there's awareness of the whole purpose of this. And it's not that we're like moving around to different things, but it's about this. There's a difference between I think I can versus like this, I know I can. There's a very big difference, and to be able to feel that difference.
Sometimes we use a term, it's really coming from the heart, but the sense of, I have to do this. I mean, that's just really the feeling inside, I have to do this. We've known that, we've had that feeling around other things in our physical life. I have to do this, I have to study for this exam if I'm gonna, become a lawyer or whatever the case. This very strong feeling, but it's coming from a very deep place, as if something's been awakened inside the self. I have to do this. Needs to be a strong voice inside coming from the heart, as if they're, the only example I can ever think of to match up with the force of this is the salmon swimming upstream. It's the only example that ever comes to mind, because it looks mad to us. Why is this animal going on this crazy journey where they possibly are going to die at the end? But this feeling of, as if we know this is instinct for the animal, but this feeling of, I have to do it. I have to do it. And it's quite a remarkable thing they do. They're going against the current. That is against everything they've been doing up to that point. They're going in the opposite direction. They seem to know what they're doing, and yet there's no real signs of what they should do. They just seem to know. So it's quite a powerful symbol of what spirituality, because it has that resistance as well. There will be resistance, but the feeling, I have to do this, I've really recognized, and there is a remembering in this as well, this awareness. Some of us call it the the potential of the human spirit. Finally, we just feel, I have to really realize that, completely realize my potential. But this deep pull, I have to do this. Now, what is on our side at this juncture is the world is falling apart around us. So that's helping a lot to wake us up.
Like, really? That helps me?
It does. It does. It really, as things start to kind of fall apart, it kind of moves us into a space where we start to think about what really matters. What is the point? What am I doing? When we start to have these very sobering scenes unfold in front of us, there is a benefit in them, is that they kind of wake us up. We kind of get lulled into day-to-day life. I wake up, I go to work, I come home, I wake up, I go to, and we don't ever think about this big stuff. But when things start to fall apart, so whoa, what am I doing? Time is so critical. What am I doing with my life? So it starts to help us have this conversation back to timing, have the conversation, what really matters. And I know many have had this conversation during the last 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
Many have found it a very useful period to have these conversations with themselves that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
I feel like you've opened a few important doors in terms of awareness, like meaningfulness. And so we may continue with this conversation in terms of spirituality and power of awareness next week. But our intent is that we will actually gently keep moving in towards how this all integrates into just my day-to-day life. But it's so different from just using these different aspects for coping. And I think that maybe again slows me not understand what do we mean by that, but hopefully it will make sense along the way. We'll have a little reflection.
When I feel safe enough, ready enough to really go inside to a very deep place in my inner world, not a dark place, but a deep place, a place of honesty, a place of sacredness, perhaps a place of ancient memories, deep into the heart of the self, where there's no images, no show, nothing to prove, explain, or defend, where I can really listen to myself. That's a place of such rich discovery, perhaps the beginning of my spiritual journey. Hearing the longings in the heart and realizing it's not a longing for anything or anyone out there. No amount of stuff or relationships can fill what I am seeking. I'm longing to reconnect with my true self, longing to be real, longing to no longer ignore the spiritual needs of the self, that cry for peace, that cry for truth, for freedom, that cry for pure love can never be fulfilled through any physical means. That's where my spiritual journey begins, at the doorway to my own heart. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Well, thank you for all who've joined on YouTube as well as Instagram. As usual, if you have questions or if topics you'd like to share, you're welcome to type in the chat box and let us know. Otherwise, we will see you next week, and I will pass it back to Judy.
So I know we were talking earlier about perhaps shifting 5 minutes later for start time, which I think everyone's gotten used to since we're always late.
It's the IT switchover.
Yeah, so we might formalize that and actually shift this to starting at 20 to 8. So we're still running a little overtime. I apologize, but at least then we might actually start on time if it's 20 to 8. So at 7:40. Please join us next week if you wish to. And again, we welcome all of your questions and ideas if you wish to share. In terms of announcements, I know we have a little workshop session this Sunday, the 22nd, 5 o'clock to 6:15 p.m. I think it's the Pure Heart Within. So that Pure Love Within, my apologies. So this is to honor or to explore the significance of Raksha Bandhan, which is also on the same day in the Hindu calendar, so the 22nd August. So that will be on our Zoom platform, so you can get the information off of the website. All of our regular recurring weekly programs are still in place. And if there's any Raj Yoga courses in Hindi, those will be listed on the website. So feel free to check there or email us if you have any questions. So until next time, Om Shanti.